Good morning, internets, and welcome back to the reading of Masterlist Logical Fallacies with Alan Mueller, Bryce Barnett, and Rain Forest. And today we are on number 133, Tone Policing.
Tone policing. A corrupt argument from pathos and delivery, the fallacy of judging the validity of an argument primarily by its emotional tone of delivery, ignoring the reality that a valid fact or argument remains valid, whether it is offered calmly and deliberatively or is shouted in a shrill or even hysterical tone, whether carefully written and published in professional academic language in a respected peer-reviewed journal, or screamed through a bullhorn and peppered with vulgarity. Conversely, a high urgent emotional matter is still urgent even if argued coldly and rationally. This fallacy creates a false dichotomy between reason and emotion, and thus implicitly favors those who are not personally involved or emotionally invested in an argument. Example, I know you're upset, but I won't discuss it with you until you calm down. Or, I believe what you wrote, I I believe what you wrote were it not for your adolescent overuse of exclamation points throughout the text. Or alternatively, you seem to be taking the death of your spouse way too calmly. You're under arrest for homicide. You have the right to remain silent. Tone policing is frequent in contemporary discourse of power, particularly in response to discourse of protest, and is occasionally used in sexist ways. Example, the accusation of being shrill is almost always used against women, never against men. See also the F-bomb.
Ooh, I have thoughts on this.
Go for it.
Um,
If you're feeling it first, go for it.
yeah, okay. Um, in the past I did used to do this. I don't do it as much anymore because I'm kind of like more aware that I'm doing it. Um, but I used to I I'm not a confrontational person. I literally will cry like at any sign of like I need to like express my feelings about something because I just don't like to do it. Um, and there's been a few times like especially in high school when I would be in like a confrontation with an ex-friend and they're just like coming at me like super aggressively and just like not it's not a super productive conversation. And so I would say something kind of similar to like what this fallacy is saying and being like I I don't want to have this conversation with you until like you can talk to me respectfully. Um, and then even now, like I see other people do this a lot, where like um with the show that Bryce and I watch on YouTube called The Line, like sometimes um when the hosts are like talking to a caller in a certain way, like people in the live chat would be like, "Oh, I would be on the host side if he wasn't like being so aggressive and throwing F-bombs like all over the place." And sometimes sometimes I do agree and I'm like, "Yeah, that was a little much," but then sometimes it's like, I mean, he's making a valid point, but you're just like disregarding the point because of like the tone that he's using. Um, so it's yeah, I've those are my thoughts on that.
Rand, I want to acknowledge you just for as we've been continuing to go throughout this process, you seem to have an increased level of confidence when you speak. And it's just something that I'm noticing as you continue moving forward. So I just want you to know that it's something I'm noticing is you seem to be more and more good with your own smile, more and more good with your own communication, your opinions, your thoughts. So it's something
Oh,
I'm
thank
noticing
you. I appreciate that.
strong. Yeah, super strong. Yeah, yeah, I think this one's like a really, I think that tone policing, I think this is such a non-black and white fallacy because on one hand, 78% of human communication is nonverbal and has that includes tonality and volume and pacing and all of this stuff. And so there is a truth to like example in discourse between a couple, there's such truth to when the emotional states of someone becomes high that they begin to become more reactive, and in that higher reactive state, there's a higher likelihood of attacking the other person unintentionally or whatever it might be. And so I think there's definitely truth to like being able to analyze and validate tone as a legitimate measure of like, hey, is this person still engaging in nonviolent and loving productive communication, or are they regressing in more reactive and attacking communication? But even then, like sometimes it's important to get into like head buddy communication if that's what's necessary for the situation. So there's so much nuance here. I think, however, what I think this is really pointing out is the automatic invalidation of somebody if their tone isn't quote unquote perfect. So it's like almost utilizing, instead of like being a critical thinker and exercising one's emotional intelligence by actually calculating and listening and being critical about how you're actually communicating. I think what this is pointing at is the act of weaponizing tone in an argumentative sense as a means to winning an argument or whatever it might be. Um, oh man, this one, because I definitely, like you, Rain, I definitely have either with myself or with others have either stopped an argument or stopped myself from communicating and said, for whether it's towards somebody else or towards myself, hey, I need to cool off, or we need to cool off because this is getting heated, this is getting intense. Let's take a break and come back. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's incredibly healthy and a beautiful thing. However, I 100% have been in situations where when I was getting activated and it was where the person opposite of me was communicating with me, saying very hurtful things, very nasty things in a very cool, calm, collected tone, of which for me was causing me to get very aggravated and very defensive and hurt. Where that person goes, "Oh, see, you're getting so emotional. What are you getting so emotional for? Like, what's the problem?" And it's like that type of behavior, like 100%, like I have experienced that so many times where the environment that I've been in with relational communication is where the person attempts to create an environment where you're constantly hyper aware of your tonality, because if you mess up your tonality, quote unquote, you then get invalidated entirely, of which I've experienced that many times, and it was horrendously oppressive and horrendously abusive. So, yeah, I think in that case, like super hard. No, I see this, I understand it, I've seen it before, and I think it's a horrible way of dehumanizing humans, unfortunately. But I think it's such a fine line because at the same time, like there is a line where when emotions get very high and communication transitions from constructive communication to destructive communication, there is a need to stop things. And then who decides what's constructive and destructive? I don't know. It's something that we engage with in real time with each other. So it's a really interesting thing. But yeah, those are my overall thoughts on this one.
I remember, being friends with you. I think during that time, I think I know what
Yeah.
time you're talking about. And oh man, that sucks. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And I can definitely see that happening. Um, yeah. Let's see. So tone policing. I think you hit the nail on the head there. So in simply put, it's just that like the emotion behind an argument doesn't make the argument better or worse, as far as its merit goes. But there's so much in communication that happens with your tone of voice.
Yeah.
And um sometimes, not always, it can reveal more about how someone is feeling, if someone is being like maybe even intentionally malicious or not, with their tone. Again, not always, um, but even then, it doesn't change the merit of the argument. But definitely when people are heated, I see that they tend to make less rational arguments, and for that reason, I regularly will be like, hey, let's chill out before we make any decisions because um when you're very heated, it's hard for you to think rationally, and especially with important decisions, you need that the most. So, but it is saying that to say that it is impossible for you to make a rational argument just because of your tone, that is also a fallacy. It's all the same fallacy. So, yeah, this one was very interesting. Um, it at first it kind of reminded me of the I think it was like appeal to emotion fallacy, where if someone is more emotional, you'll give them more credence. Um, and that's kind of like this, but I like how this one is a little bit more specific. Um, and yeah, that's my thoughts on tone policing. Any any response to any of that?
I think more than anything with this one, it calls for, I think it's like important to say the way to avoid this fallacy from being used by ourselves or by other people is to hold a high standard of discernment and presence within communication. It's like, I think the way through this one is like if someone tries to dismiss through tone, it's like, can we consistently focus on the individual? And can we consistently ask questions like, what is this person really trying to say? If this person was a well-intended, kind, loving person who is getting heated for a perfectly valid reason, why? What's happening? What's underneath all of this? Where is the truth in what's being said? And being consistently inquisitive about that, I think, is the way to navigate through this one versus, blanket statement being like, oh, this is getting too intense, so you're getting heated, fuck off. Just like like I think it's the way to do it is to be really engaged with people consistently.
Awesome. Love it.